Welcome to the Disruptive Innovation Festival, the world's largest online festival of ideas, now in its 5th year. My name is Nick Jeffries from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and I'm here to introduce this session, Africa, Can It Become a Circular Continent? Before I hand you over to our host for the session, Peter Desmond, allow me to set the context a little. Population growth in Europe between 1996 and 2016 was 0.3%. In Africa, in the same period, the population increased by 2.7% a year. In other words, 9 times faster. The African urban population is set to double in the next 30 years. Africa has 7 out of the 10 fastest growing economies. Between 2000 and 2010, university enrollment has doubled. And in the last 20 years, the number of South African graduates has increased by a factor of 4. While all the economic indicators and vibrant population gives us cause for optimism, there is also a little trepidation. Based on the experiences in other parts of the world, the social and environmental costs that we sometimes pay for economic growth can be severe. Take, for example, the fast-moving consumer goods sector, which allows you to choose from 100 types of shampoo and other consumables, but then dumps 85% of the material inputs, about $2.7 trillion worth of materials, into our landfills each year. Or the industrialized food system, brilliant at filling our supermarket aisles with cheap snacks, but now poor diet is the leading cause of premature death, and, well, from chronic metabolic diseases. And the way we grow our food commodities is degrading the environment at an alarming rate. So the question at the heart of today's discussion is, can countries in Africa achieve their well-deserved comfort, well-being and prosperity in a way that is aligned to the principles of the circular economy? One that makes effective use of materials, builds resilience, and does not wreck the beautiful continent. As with all DIF sessions, this is it's intended to be interactive, and so you can send in your questions or comments via Twitter to the handle ThinkDiff, or just put them directly into the session page. So, without further ado, let me hand you over to our host, Peter Desmond.
Thank you, Nick. As Nick says, my name is Peter Desmond, and I am a co-founder of the African Circular Economy Network. The network was established in 2016 as a not-for-profit organisation registered in South Africa. It aims to support circular initiatives in Africa that generate well-being and prosperity through new forms of economic production and consumption, whilst maintaining and regenerating scarce resources. We currently do this through representation of 21 of the 54 countries in Africa. And as you can hear, Suzanne is in Africa. So she's sitting just outside, just inside a room where there are birds outside. So I wonder if you could mute your microphone, Suzanne, so that
absolutely,
so that we can. That's fine. Thank you very much. Great to hear the African birds live. Anyway, our activities at the network include research, publication of case studies, sharing of knowledge, and supporting the implementation of projects. And we are collaborating with a number of international networks, including the African Circular Economy Alliance. This alliance was launched in November 2017 at COP23 in Bonn by the 3 governments of South Africa, Nigeria and Rwanda, with the support of the World Economic Forum. The purpose of this alliance is to support programs on the continent at policy level by the creation of a continent-wide network of government leaders. And the Alliance is organising its first event during the Africa Green Growth Forum, which is taking place in Rwanda on the 28th of November. And 2 of our network representatives will be participating. So we have 2 organisations working in Africa on the circular economy, the African Circular Economy Network and the African Circular Economy Alliance. Circular practices have been in existence for many decades in Africa. For example, a culture of reuse and repair exists, where resources to buy new are limited. Yet most of these initiatives are hidden from view and have not been studied or published in academic literature. And we hope to start to correct that process during the session. The African Circular Economy Network is now researching circular case studies in Africa. And you'll find a link eventually in the comments box to a map which shows a few examples from 5 different countries. Unfortunately, one of our members, Olivia Mabera, who is manager of the electronic waste recycling facility in Rwanda, is unable to join us today. This facility is only the second of its kind in Africa. But because he can't be with us, there will also be, or there has been, a link to a video clip which shows how the facility is working in Rwanda. So in this session, we're going to hear from 3 of our members about how the circular economy is progressing in their countries, in South Africa, Morocco, and Nigeria. And we'll also hear from Jason Stam of AB InBev, the largest brewer in the world, about a new circular initiative. The question posed by this session is, can Africa become a circular continent? And perhaps we can reflect on this question after we've heard from our speakers. So as Nick has said, please post your questions on the chat screen, and we'll group them together to be answered at the end after we've heard from the 4 speakers. So our first speaker is Suzanne in Cape Town. So hello, Suzanne, over to you.
Thank you so much. Well, you pretty much said it all already. And I shut out the African birds now as well, so hopefully everyone can hear me. Circular economy in South Africa. I think there are 2 sides of it. Policy-wise, I think we are still in very early stages. But I think in terms of the daily practice of what South Africans are doing, we are actually very advanced. We just haven't given it the name of circular economy, but a sharing and a service economy is really at the heart of the South Africans. You mentioned also the increase of the human population, obviously the same in South Africa. We are also seeing that humans are our strongest resource. And I think that is one of the things that really made us think why we need to talk about circular economy in Africa as well. In the North, we're talking about resources, meaning materials, but our biggest resource in Africa are humans. And to meaningful employ them, meaningful creating a service economy and using them also as a technical or a service kind of nutrient for the circular economy. And one of our colleagues, Alex Lemille, he's been quite extensively investigating what the human capacity must do to fulfill the butterfly diagram and to add that dimension. We see also that circular economy, it's in South Africa a very sexy term. Everyone tries to incorporate that term in what they're currently doing. And there's also a slight danger of some deliberate misinterpretation. I have actually heard people talking about thermal waste to energy projects and using in the same sentence the word circular economy. So we must be very careful about this, that the term is not getting hijacked like we saw this in the past with the term sustainability. You were already talking about the alliance. That's really exciting because South Africa, together with Rwanda and Nigeria, and in collaboration with the World Economic Forum, has started that alliance, which is a political supported system. And we also have seen now national government taking on the agenda in the subjects for chemicals, waste, and climate change to develop guidelines that are actually linked to circular economy principles. What excites me is that in South Africa, we are the cradle of the African Circular Economy Network. That's how we started. But we have now so many chapters and they have developed in a very short space of time. So I think we can see that the time has come for the circular economy in Africa, seeing that uptake of other countries and really supporting this agenda. What also was exciting was when we had the Circular Economy Mapping Week, we joined the Circular Economy Club and mapping events and projects all over South Africa, and that revealed a lot of circular inspired actions. Again, perhaps not in the name of circular economy, but certainly touching on the principles of the circular economy. And you will see later various project links that we will put up on the internet, but I'll just unpack them slightly. One of them that you will learn more about is agri-protein, which has been made in South Africa, the first type of insect protein from black soldier flies, and the maggots get then ground down and made into a meal. I think in terms of the future food security debate, we need to get used to insect protein. And again, in Africa, we already eating the mopani worms and the crickets, and they're actually delicious. So I think it's just a case of getting used to a bit of a different type of protein. Then I will share a little bit more about the Cape Town Maker Station, which is a really exciting facility. It has a maker school where children actually learn to dismantle electronic waste, but then also reassemble it into a new thing. So taking an LED light and a wheel and making a car out of it. So giving kids the power back to create. I think it's a very important thing for Africa to get this power back to create, repair, fix things. The other link that I thought was worthwhile mentioning comes from Biomimicry SA. Biomimicry is a very core concept here that we link to circular economy principles. And there are two projects that you could read up. The one is based in an informal settlement, and it is actually utilizing a natural water treatment solution. It is inspired by the eco-machine principle of DOT, and it clarifies and cleans wastewater that is otherwise a toxic runoff in this township going down the hill. It's a gravity-fed system, and it works very well. And the other one is actually Durban Urban Resilience Project, where a huge industrial area in the north of Durban is looked at, and the idea is that as an otherwise resource-constrained area in terms of water, waste, and energy, we're looking at an ecosystem function restoration. So looking at how can an industrial area be restored so that it maintains or gets back an ecosystem function that normally only nature has. The other one that I mentioned, Bottle to Bottle, very exciting. It's a company in South Africa, the first bottle-to-bottle recycling for PET bottles. So no more downcycling, you know, not ending up in roof gutter, in roofs, but really back to a bottle. Also using tobacco as a fuel for airplanes. Then we're also developing bricks. That's the Ram Brick project out of waste, soil, and rubble, and the clothing bank where retailers are actually giving away clothing, and single women with kids are learning to actually sort, grade, fix, and then sell it. So it's a huge job creation project, and I'm done. So that is South Africa and circular economy for you.
Thank you, Suzanne, for getting through that in the 5 minutes that we were allocated. So there will be questions later, so be prepared to answer to those. So next up, so Radia, please join us, unmute your microphone and share with us what's happening in Morocco.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be among you guys. So I'll be talking to you about what we did 2 years ago. So I run a consultancy company on CSR mechanisms and sustainable growth in Morocco. In this company, we also run a sustainable innovation platform where we tackle sustainable issues, one issue every year. As COP22 was in Morocco, as some of you might know, we decided to gather international experts, 15 of them, for 2 days of workshop in Casablanca around circular economy and circular economy in Africa. So what we wanted is to have a tool that we can share with corporations, with civil society organizations, to make circular economy a concept that is more familiar to Moroccan stakeholders, because circular economy in Morocco exists, as in several countries in Africa, but as Suzanne was saying, it's not defined as circular economy, and the circular economy initiatives that we can see in Morocco are most of them in the informal sector, and they're not in the formal sector. So we have an environmental issue, but we also have a social issue with, for example, in the Casablanca area, we have 10,000 persons that gather waste directly from the bins. And they sell the plastic, and 10,000 of them only in the Casablanca area, which is a lot. So Morocco has set a sustainable development strategy in 2015, but the least we can say is that circular economy appears in the strategy, in the national strategy, saying that we should tackle this and make sure that, yes, we get into a circular economy to lower environmental negative impacts, but also to create environmental and social value. Unfortunately, what we can see is that the strategy is not effective yet. Mechanisms have not been suggested to different economic actors. And so we can talk about a circular economy in Morocco, but it's still very not very mature, as all the few initiatives that we have are scattered and do not gather significant stakeholders around a national strategy on circular economy. So basically, what happens in Morocco, I'm going to tell you about a few initiatives. One that is very meaningful is the Coalition for Waste Recovery, and it's a composition involving actors from the world of business, associations, public institutions concerned by the issue, and they try to improve the efficiency of the use of natural resources. They give a special attention to two prerequisites necessary for the development of industrial symbiosis. So they support Moroccan economic actors towards sustainable procurement mechanisms, and they also work on strategic actions to put in place sustainable solutions for the benefit of circular economy in Morocco. But most of their work today is really explaining what circular economy is, and explaining also the opportunities that circular economy can have on our general and global economy. Another initiative in Morocco is the Moroccan Center for Cleaner Production. It was set up in 1999 as a public-private partnership between the Ministry of Industry, the ministry delegate to the Ministry of Energy, Mines and Water, to make clean production a means of improving the competitiveness of companies. It is a center that is a member of the Global Network on Cleaner Production and Resource Efficiency, which now has more than 70 cleaner production centers located in different countries of the world. The Moroccan Center for Cleaner Production provides support for national companies to identify and implement environmental projects related to technical assistance, life cycle analysis, carbon footprint. And I will be ending this presentation by talking about Renault, the car manufacturer, which is very, very present in Morocco, especially in the north of Morocco. And they set up an industrial symbiosis in a small city called Melousa. It was built in 2015, and different strong infrastructures have been set to launch the symbiosis, which is a great initiative. But once again, it's only one good initiative in an ocean of solutions that still needs to be defined and found in our context. Was I short enough?
Perfect timing, Radia.
Thank you.
Thank you. I also want to recognize that English is not your first language, and
yes.
I think you're more of a French speaker.
I am.
So whilst Morocco, you speak a lot of Arabic, we were very keen in this presentation to have somebody from the Francophone countries in Africa, because there are a lot of different cultures, different languages. So thank you for getting through that very nicely. So we're now moving southwest towards Nigeria, and we have Paul, if you would like to share with us what is happening in Nigeria. So Radia, Paul and Susanna are all members of the African Circular Economy Network, and Suzanne with me was one of 5 co-founders of the network. So over to you, Paul, for your piece.
Oh, thank you. You know, at the start of the circular economy discourse, a lot of us felt Africa was really far from the circular economy. We felt Nigeria was very far from the circular economy. But when we began to understand the concepts of the circular economy, we realized that the circular economy has been in existence in Nigeria for a long time. It's just that it's not existing within institutional circles. Maybe you go to local communities and rural areas, you see that the circular economy is at work. And what I want to do is look at some activities and certain practices that have existed in Nigeria that others are also working on to see how they can promote. So that's aligned to the circular economy thought. Nigeria is a big country, so I'll be taking my examples from different regions to see how we can get a spread of the activities. I would love to start with the Niger Delta region where I'm from. Growing up, we've always realized that periwinkle shells, clam shells, which usually they throw away. But if you go to a lot of coastal communities, you realize that this periwinkle and clam shells are used as aggregates for concrete, and especially for low-cost development. And this is something that still exists in communities, but there was this push away from them when the wealth came in. But people are beginning to realize that it's still important and is one aspect of our culture that we can still reinforce and strengthen. So right now there are campaigns going on. There are a lot of researches on use of periwinkle and clam shells as aggregates for construction. And I posted some of the articles that have gone on to research on the use of these materials. It's a strong support to the circular economy because we've relied so much on sea aggregates and of course gravel from open mines, which has scarred our landscape. But now pushing to periwinkles, which we just throw away. If you go to some waste dumps, you see periwinkles thrown out and they are unsightly, but now people are beginning to use them for construction. So it's a good initiative and we want to see how we can promote those activities within Nigeria. Then another challenge has been the energy sector. If you're well aware, a lot of Nigerians rely on off-grid electricity, which has caused significant environmental concerns. I remember 2 years ago when I came back from the UK, if you just wake up in the morning and try to get a wipe of your car, you can just see the soot all over. And it has been a big challenge, but recently a company in Nigeria, MTN, which is a telecommunications firm, partnering with Lumos, a solar provider, have come up with something, they call it the yellow box, which is a way of providing solar electricity to Nigerians. Currently, there are over 80,000 subscribers in Nigeria. For my city, last week I spoke with a provider and he told me in my city we have over 2,000 subscribers. I just subscribed about 2 weeks ago, so I've joined the solar network. Well, we use this as a backup when the off-grid system is not reliable or when we are cut off from the national grid. So we can use the off-grid as a form of support to any.
I am not sure if everybody can hear Paul. I think he may have. Any thoughts, Nick?
Paul seems to have frozen on my screen.
Okay.
I'm wondering if he was just in the middle of a really fascinating discourse, though. I'm wondering if we maybe move on to Jason.
Yeah.
And then hopefully Paul will rejoin us later.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Jason, rather sooner than we thought. Welcome to the session, and yeah, please introduce yourself and what you're doing. I do appreciate there'll be some background noise because you are in an airport lounge in Rome. So
Paul does seem to be back now. Jason, should we just let him?
Sorry, I disconnected, but I'm back on.
Okay, go ahead, Paul.
So if you go to those places, we have a okay.
Should Paul just give it one more go, and then Paul, if it keeps cutting out, I mean, what you're saying is incredibly interesting, and there are some questions associated with that. Do you want to just give it one more go, and then maybe we'll move on to Jason? Yeah.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Am I back online? Okay, so within my city, Lagos and Abuja, there's this cluster. If you have a bad phone, a laptop, anything, a mobile device, you go back there and they fix it for you. In the past, we just throw them away. But now, if you have a bad phone and you go there, they buy it from you and use it as materials for other phones. So let's say you have a bad screen for your mobile device, you go there, you just get another one and fix it for you and use the other one as material for the other phone. So right now, people no longer just rely on getting new phones. People can fix devices like laptops and phones, and a big cluster. There's a lot of employment for SMEs. If you go to these regions, people just occupy spaces of about a square meter, and you have over 200 to 300 young entrepreneurs working in this cluster. Number one, it creates employment, and it helps us to deal with the e-waste, which has been a big challenge for Nigeria. So that's another thing going on. Then in the north, there's this young chap. I don't have the link, but I have his email. He started the iGreen initiative. What he does is he uses waste tin cans, rubber, plastics, and wires to produce high-end furniture that has African appeal. And right now is growing in the north, in Kano City, and a lot of people are beginning to patronize his products, and so more or less people are shifting to the use of scrap materials to produce high-end furniture. There are a lot of other initiatives currently going on. Some of them are online. Many of them are still not documented because they are more SMEs that are even not yet registered. But these activities go to show that there's a push towards the circular economy. Recently, we've been going out to try to document activities that are going on as from the ACN Nigeria chapter, and we begin to realize that there are loads of activities currently going on that promote the circular economy, but it's just that they are not institutionalized. And we recently observed that the government is beginning to do things. They've come up with the extended producer responsibility. The environmental regulations body is coming up with that, and they want companies to begin to take responsibility for their produce. I think 2 companies in Lagos are currently keyed into the initiative. That's the Coca-Cola and the 7-Up bottling company. They are now responsible for the plastic they generate. I think there's a partnership between those companies and the Lagos state government to see how they can get the waste from the bottling of soft drinks. Yeah, so those are some of the activities currently going on. We're still trying to see how we can push for policy within Nigeria. Currently, right now, there's no clear-cut policy that promotes the circular economy. Most of the policies are just bit part, but I think we're gradually shifting towards the circular economy in this country. But it's a big way to go because the landmass is massive.
Yeah. I'm glad that you managed to finish, Paul. Thank you for that, because there's such a lot of information there, and I think we could devote a whole day conference just on what you said in Nigeria. So I know that we'll come back to some of these questions, and thank you for posting the links which people will see in due course, so we can. And I think we're very keen to share knowledge. I think we've got a lot to learn from Africa. So let's keep this discourse going. So thank you for that, Paul. Jason, over to you. I know you've got some background noise. You're going to share with us a new circular initiative that is underway. So please go ahead and share with us.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Peter. So yeah, my name is Jason Stam. I work at AP InBev. I'm actually based in Switzerland and am part of a group focused on developing disruptive new initiatives from within the company. Particularly focused on leveraging our co-product stream, which is primarily consisting of spent grain and spent yeast that comes out of our brewing process. So now they've framed it up. We produce 1.4 million metric tons of dry spent grain every year. So that's primarily barley with a little bit of rice and maize mixed in as well. But if you look at the protein content of that spent grain, it's enough to feed 25 million people on an annual basis. So diving a little bit deeper into the makeup of that spent grain, about 40% of the spent grain that comes out of the brewing process is pure plant protein, high quality, really good for humans, but definitely difficult to digest because it's surrounded. The other 60% that's remaining is fibrous plant fiber. High in arabinoxylan content, which is a prebiotic, so very good for gut health, but certainly not the most soluble fiber that you can find. So we've developed a proprietary technology to actually break down those fibers and make not only the fiber easier to digest, but allow the human gut to access that plant protein and use it for growth. And so what we want to do, I think it's pretty clear for us is, let's use that to help fight malnourishment around the world. And I think where we want to start is in South Africa. If you look at the malnourishment problem in South Africa relative to other countries, it's not relatively speaking in absolute numbers, it's not massive, but there is a problem. There's 2.75 million people suffering from malnourishment in South Africa. They're making about $5 to $10 US a day. And if you take a look at what they're consuming, things that are affordable are not really that nutritious. They're really more focused on tummy fill. And things that are nutritious are not affordable for that group. And so what you end up having, you don't have to go deep into malnourishment, but you have that cycle of malnourishment where people grow up malnourished. They perform poorly in school and then can't perform well in work, but continue to have families. And then the cycle starts again, and children grow up in the same way, and it perpetuates itself. That causes a loss of about $6 billion to the South African government on an annual basis. So there is a sizable opportunity there that we want to address. But the way that we want to go about it, I think it's very clear for us, especially the approach that we take in our group, is not to create some kind of nutrient pack that is full of protein and vitamins but tastes terrible. We really need to understand the consumer and what they want, because our hypothesis is that we're not going to be giving away free food or anything like that. We want to make something that consumers desire and that they'd be proud to have. So we really spend a lot of time over the last year really understanding the consumers in our target demographic, which is kind of the base of the pyramid demographic within South Africa. Understanding their day-to-day habits. What are they consuming already? Where are they shopping? What is their mindset, and how can we create something that they really want? And so that was really what informed the solution development that we've created, and we've developed really a couple delicious variants of a beverage that we're excited to launch in 2019. And one of the things that I think is so great about the model that we're creating is not only can we make a really positive social impact by creating something that's affordable and desirable for this target demographic, but we have a business model that works for the company, and it's something that we think can be sustained over the long term, and it's not going to be something that is going to be a quick charitable initiative that we put out there for a year or two and then have to kill, but something that can actually sustain itself and grow over time. So I think that's one of the things that makes this product very exciting. Now, if we want to look at our target consumer a little bit more deeply, again, base of the pyramid, we're looking at someone who has about 3 children. They're earning money from the government on a once a month basis. They'll get a big check, usually subsidies for the number of, that is based on the number of children they have in their household. So they take that money, they go shopping, and typically it's the mother doing the shopping, and she needs to buy food not only for her kids, but it's going to be for her husband or anyone else that lives in the house. She'll have family members there, and so we needed to make something that is attractive for children, but also attractive for the rest of the household. So we focused on things like, is it filling? Is it something that is going to help her kids grow and develop well, both mentally and physically? Is it going to be convenient, because the way that our target consumer lives their day-to-day life, it's not always easy to wake up at 6 in the morning and make the family a huge breakfast. So we need to make something that can be easily accessed and she can rely on to feed her family. And then, of course, I think it goes without saying that it needs to be within their means. And so we looked at, again, across all of the different consumer products out there right now. We really couldn't find another product that was either very nutritious and convenient, or convenient and not nutritious, or had a short shelf life, or maybe was more of an indulgence, like yogurts, for example, that taste great but they're not filling. or things that are often advertised as nutritious, but in fact they're really just sugar-laden juices, for example. So that's really what we see out there as an opportunity for us, for our company to play in. And again, we're excited to launch the product in the middle of 2019. It'll be on shelves in Polokwane. We'll do small pilot launches within that area, hopefully seeing that we're getting consumer traction. And then once we're finding that we're successful and we iterate on the product and really have something that we can leverage, we're going to expand across South Africa and hope to move into countries where the need is even greater, like Mozambique, Tanzania, for example, and hopefully see a lot of great success with the product. So we're really excited about it, and yeah, thanks for having me on here to talk about it.
Great, thanks, Jason. And yeah, I could listen to that all day, to be honest. It's really exciting to hear just what a very large organization is doing to focus on the base of the pyramid and find nutritional products that are going to really make a difference in people's lives. So thank you for sharing that. I know we'll hear more about it, and we look forward to hearing about the launch next year. Nick, I think I just want to say that in terms of research, we're working with the Institute of Development Studies at Sussex University to continue researching into all elements of the circular economy in respect of emerging economies. So in a sense, this is just the start of a conversation and involving eventually a lot more people. So I think we've probably got time now for some questions and answers. Can I hand over to you, Nick?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you all the speakers. Some very, very fascinating presentations there. We've got quite a few questions coming in, so I'm going to ask all the people responding to them to be a little bit concise with their answers. So the first one, Radia, you mentioned the informal economy, and I don't know if you're the right person to answer this, but maybe you can give it a go. So this informal sector, or the informal economy, it comes up quite a lot in conversations about emerging and developing economies. Can you just define that briefly, and then can you perhaps suggest how the informal sector and the circular economy will come together?
Well, there is just to make my idea clearer, there are a significant number of people working to reuse, recycle, and repair, but in the informal sector. I mentioned the people who will go to the bins to pick up the plastic and sell it afterwards. So their income comes from circular economy. But what we think is a very important issue is that they are not protected socially. They don't have any social protection. They are not in the regular economic flow. So they are a side of the society socially, and also they face strong environmental impact, because when you go to a bin to go and fetch the waste, that is a sanitary problem as well. As in Nigeria, as our colleague here in Nigeria was saying, we also have huge markets and a very strong knowledge, informal knowledge on how to repair informatical tools, telephone, computers, you name it. We can repair it for a very little amount of money and very quickly. And so this concerns a significant amount of people who are not in the formal sector, and thus we cannot consider that they are protected, and that circular economy maybe brings them a regular income, but it doesn't put them in the regular economic flow.
Thank you for that. We have another question, and I think this might be a Suzanne question. Let's try her out. Circular economy is a new opportunity to create shared well-being in Africa. Will this be driven by multinationals or local enterprises, or both? Can you give that a go?
Yeah, the very short answer. I think it's going to be both. I think definitely, as Raja said, the informal sector is full of innovation. And if you look very careful at how it's structured, it looks for an outsider like a big mess sometimes, but it's an organically growing, very ingenious and very cost and resource efficient mechanism. But I also think enterprises, so as I mentioned, like AgriProtein as one of them, they are in for the money for this, and they're making good money with circular economy principle approaches while they're doing good for the planet and humans as well. So I think it is actually an opportunity for both, specifically in Africa.
Great. Paul, you mentioned that there is no clear policy in Nigeria for circular economy. Are you aware of any policies in any other countries in Africa about the circular economy? Could you tell us about that, or could you tell us about what a good circular policy might look like?
Okay. Currently, I had this notion that Rwanda had a good policy, but I recently, through my conversations with Peter and through my search, I realized that currently no African country has a clear-cut policy. Well, let's take an example, which is the circular economy package for Europe. I focus a lot on that policy, and it was a strong drive towards pushing the circular economy within Europe. These things don't exist in Africa. Currently in Nigeria, there is nothing close to that. We just have broad environmental policies that might just capture a component of the CE, but they're not clear-cut, they're not defined. And that is why implementation sometimes is a challenge, because even the drivers of the policy don't even really know where the policy is heading. But I think if we have a clear-cut policy, I think the awareness will be there and people will begin to work towards actualizing these policies like the EU circular economy package.
Can I chip in here, Nick? I think we've started to do some research on this question because it's become obvious that there isn't anything called a circular economy policy in one country in Africa. Now, I say that I might be proved wrong. However, there are many different legislations, regulations, including Rwanda. Now, the plastic bag law 57 was promulgated in 2008, where the it was prohibited the manufacturing, importation, use, and sale of polythene bags. And that, so when I've traveled to Rwanda, the signs at the airport saying, don't bring plastic bags into this country. It'll be taken away from you. So there are some wonderful, my research in my master's highlighted just how many policies there and legislations there were. Implementation and accountability is a real question. And mind you, that's the case in Europe as well. Some great legislation, but even the EU circular economy package, there's still some way to go. So what we're keen to do, as well as case studies of circular initiatives in Africa, we're also keen to pick up policies. I've got a couple of students doing some research to see what policies exist, green policies, all sorts of financing mechanisms that we can actually share with people. And I see one other question that I can answer here is about the map of circular economy in Africa, the initiatives that we are mapping currently. We'd like to do more of that, to try and get at least one in every country. And we're working with the Royal Society of Arts in London to create an online library of this. And you'll hear more about this in the due course as we start to create this library. The suggestion, I think, of the question was about an app, a mobile phone application. And I think that's a great idea to share this knowledge, this information about what's going on in Africa in policy terms, in case study terms, through communication. And that's why we're very happy to work with the African Circular Economy Network and the African Circular Economy Alliance. So the two, the business focus and the policy focus, so we can bring these things together. So I hope I've answered a question there.
Yeah, we really look forward to seeing that, however it materializes. We have a question for Jason. Jason, there's clearly a sort of a strong social and health benefit from the beverage that you described, but is there also a sort of local enterprise development or a local economy benefit angle to what you're doing?
Yeah, so I mean, I think you know, our primary channels that we'll be selling the product through will be through the informal trade sector. So a lot of spaza shops and independent small grocers. So hopefully that has an add-on benefit for existing businesses that are already out there. We're also exploring some different potential programs, and those could be anything from helping to develop people that are already selling products on the side of the street, and leveraging their expertise to sell our product. And also, finding unemployed youth in neighborhoods where we are doing these pilot launches, to bring them in and train them not only to promote the product that we have, but also then to train them on things like CV writing, personal financial management, basic life skills that I think could be very beneficial for people who may lack that knowledge. So we do want to have a very local impact as well. And there's just a number of ideas that we're looking at now as we prepare for the launch.
Great. And Jason actually sent me a sample of this beverage a few weeks back, and my 4-year-old son, well, put it this way, he certainly was intrigued. So can I just do a couple of sort of reasonably quick fire ones? Radia, you mentioned a industrial symbiosis project that Renault are running. I think it's a place called Melusa. What other, what other enterprises? Can you describe quickly the enterprises within that industrial symbiosis system, and and how they're working together?
Sure. Actually, it concerns Renault and different suppliers of Renault. So they set up a project to reuse the ashes of the biomass boiler, as it's pretty technical, I'm sorry, as fertilizer for neighboring agricultural parcels. So it's an industrial project of car manufacturing, but that also benefits to agricultural parcels. They also put in place a closed circuit for the use of water at the production sites. And they have communicated also on a 98% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, equivalent to 135,000 tons of CO2 equivalent per year, which is quite significant positive impact. They also work on the combustion quality control system to ensure optimal use of resources. They also have initiatives on biofuel, from agricultural and forest waste in their neighborhood. But honestly, what I'm lacking as an answer is a number of companies that gathered around the symbiosis. But if I'm not mistaken, it should be around 20 companies around the Renault supplier and Renault itself.
Great. Well, perhaps if you could share that with us later on, maybe on the chat. That would be great.
We'll definitely do.
I'm getting a little bit of feedback now for some reason. There's an echo. Well, I'll try and continue. Susanna, you thought you'd got away with it because you just mentioned it very briefly. Tobaccos as fuel for aeroplanes. How does that work?
Okay, let me give you a bit more background, because I also researched it only, 2 years ago. South African Airways took off once with those biofuels, and that was basically the end of that. It hasn't taken off yet, but it will be revived. So this project that I found out about, called Waste to Wing, is re-looking into this whole idea of waste biomass into aviation fuel, and that's obviously what is behind this whole idea.
Marvelous. Right, I think we're coming to the end now. So, Peter, before I wrap it up, do you have any closing words?
Thank you, Nick. I'm absolutely fascinated by what I've heard. I haven't heard a lot of these things before, so I think it's a great opportunity. We've only had a small amount of time. And what we try and do at the African Circular Economy Network is to gather people together in regular knowledge shares. And we're partnering with ICLE, a local government initiative in Africa, and that's a global network. So we're working with them to run a webinar. I think it's going to be in the new year now, and it may answer the question that somebody's asking about driving green procurement systems and about policy reforms, because it's very much a local government initiative. How can cities use their procurement systems to accelerate the transition towards a circular economy in Africa. So I think I'd love to continue this discussion with people over the next few months. We'll find ways of doing that. So hopefully we can spread the word about this and get more people involved.
Fantastic. So all that remains me to say is thank you very much for our presenters, Susanna from South Africa, Jason, who I think is not actually in Africa at the moment, he's in an airport, Radia from Morocco, and Paul from Nigeria. It's been a fascinating discussion. I've learnt a lot. I just might add that one of my roles at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation is to collect case studies for the circular economy. We don't have enough African ones. I would love more, so please share them with me through the African Circular Economy Network, who I participate with. We have experimented with a new form of case studies recently. These are our news outlet called Circulate. We're clustering articles around regions and themes. We've wrote about the US, we've wrote about Brazil and China. I would really love to write a cluster article about Africa. So let's make that an aim. And if you enjoyed this DIF session, tomorrow there is a session on the state of impact on blockchain within African and emerging markets. We also are also available on Catch Up. Suzanne mentioned Alex Lamille. He did a DIF session on making the circular economy work for human development with Patrick Schroeder. And I also did a session with Harold Friedel from Circular Economy and Sachin Boite from Arup on circular economy, a new development paradigm, a new paradigm for international development. So they're available on Catch Up. So thank you very, very much for joining this session, and I hope that you will tune in again soon. Bye-bye.